welcome to another episode of the Transformative Principal podcast. I'm Mike Caldwell, your host today, and joining me is the legendary Nick Pretasky. Nick, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
I'm excited too. Yeah, I'm looking forward to the conversation. I'm trying to think, Nick, when did we meet? How long have we known each other? It hasn't been that long.
I think it was at some point last spring. So it's probably been 9 months.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I feel like I've known you longer. You're one of those people don't know you. You're one of those people that I don't know, you just instantly or at least I did, kind of instantly connect with, kind of jive with, see things, I think, in a similar way. I love the title of your LLC, the Humanistic Leadership. We'll get into that, but I think it says a lot about you. But before we go there, we also have this connection of, I think, in wilderness and outdoors and stuff. Your history as a backcountry, was it guide or something like that? I'm kind of jealous. Like when I was a young whippersnapper, I thought my future would be a mountain man, like living in the mountains. I know it doesn't pay well, but it sounds fun. So tell me about your experience as a backcountry guide, and then we'll talk about kind of where that led you and what you're doing today. But yeah, I'm really interested in hearing about that.
Probably similar to you. Like growing up, I loved being in the outdoors. I loved experiencing it. And I had an opportunity when I was in college to go overseas and study. So in Lismore, which is New South Wales, Australia, I was able to attend Southern Cross University. And when I was at the university, there was an array of classes I could take, and I decided to take a bunch of their adventure education classes and their outdoor leadership classes. And there were several different classes, but for the most part, I had an opportunity to learn how to lead in the backcountry, down there we'd call it in the bush. And I was able to get to have a lot of really great opportunities to be out and learning some of those skills. Got to get into the rainforests. We did some crazy tests and things with orienteering and setting up rock climbing, and we just did a lot of different ways to learn in the outdoors and really ways to lead others in unfamiliar territory. Leveraging that, when I moved back to the United States and finished my degree, I decided, whoa, before I get into this whole school thing, I really want to do some of this guiding thing. And because I had a little bit of that experience, I was able to get my feet wet into the first organization. And then pretty soon I was guiding longer trips out in New York. And then I got a job for a foundation out of Maine. So I was able to guide 23-day sea kayak trips out of Maine. And once you start building your resume as a guide, you just start to say, I've always wanted to live in Alaska. So you pick Alaska and you call up a couple places, you say, hey, here's my experience. And they say, oh, that's great. And then you move to Alaska and you start guiding in the Kenai Fjords National Park, some sea kayaking trips there. I was able to leverage that to move to Oregon and in California. And so just do a bunch of different guiding. And I don't know if I was a mountain man. But I did live out of my car.
Either was I. So
I did live out of my car. I can assure you it's not a great way to make money, but it was a really fun time in my life, in my 20s, early 30s, and just had that opportunity to see the world through the wilderness, but also learn a lot about myself through the lens of others as they were experiencing challenges and successes and failures in the outdoors.
There's got to be a story or two that you just like carry with you from that experience, like some sort of like crazy thing that happened. I don't know, stuck overnight without food or water, trapped by a bear. There's got to be something. Like, give me some drama. I'm dying for some drama. It's late afternoon. You got anything?
Yeah, so I have a lot because as all great leaders, right, we learn through our mistakes, and man, do we make some. And we just don't let that. We do not want that opportunity to ever leave without some growth. So yeah, there's some stories. Let's take one from Alaska. I was guiding in the Kenai Fjords National Park, and for for a little bit of context, it's a national park that you can only get to by plane or by boat. There's a large ice field that is in between kind of where you would say population and this park. So we would load our kayaks up on a boat and they would drive us into the national park. It was about a 4.5 hour boat trip. They would drop me off with my clients and they would leave and come back, 7 days or however long we were out. Well, I had this group from Germany that I was taking out, and then in the night before we sort of meet and we get our gear together, and there was this woman and her daughter kind of in our shop, if you will, on the docks that we ran into, and she started telling the story. They were from Florida, and they've always wanted to do this. And I was like, hey, we have 2 spots on this trip. Very naive guide at this point, right? So I'm just thinking, yeah, that's great. I'd love to take a couple more people. Didn't really have this thought on like at what level do they really know what we're about to do? She had mentioned she had paddled a canoe before or something. I was like, oh, I'll teach you everything when we get out there. Well, needless to say, they were not very good paddlers. But my first clue was I shouldn't have just invited them onto this trip with 24 hours to go, as they like go to the next door to start buying some Helly Hansen gear and just like outfit themselves, right? So you're like that's number one. I didn't recognize that tip. The second tip is now we're out. We do a lot of practicing. There's some early bonding, some early just figuring each other out, figuring out on the boats. We've already been dropped out in the national park though, but we don't really do any big trips. And I kid you not, within the first couple hours, they broke our first sea kayak. And sea kayaks they have like a rudder, and there's a system for the back person and a pedal system to help you steer because the water gets really big. We're all in we are in dry suits. We are paddling in glacial water, so yeah, you don't last real long in glacial water. So it's really important. We're all fully skirted, and so those rudders are pretty important. But they broke that wire really quickly. I was lucky enough that there was a tourism boat that I was able to hail, and they had some extra wire. I fixed their boat, but again, at this point, I'm still thinking like this is good. Day one of day
Boy.
6, like we're good. Well, needless to say, the next day we were heading out to Pedersen Glacier. It's a long paddle, but it's this beautiful lagoon that you paddle into, and you get to experience this glacier. The only way you can access it is by sea kayak. You wouldn't be able to take a large boat in there. But in order to get in, there's a really small little inlet. So we had to paddle into this inlet, and as a guide, you're timing tide. So at high or low and it's slack, like you can kind of get in and out. But if it's mid tide, like it is going to be ripping through there. Well, we took too long to get there. We definitely took too long once we got there because there were a lot of other issues that we don't have time to talk about today. But now we need to get out, and there's basically standing waves going in that we have to be able to get out of this small little inlet. But the tide's moving so quickly. My German group was easy to get out, but this pair was not. And at one point, I'm out of my kayak. They're tied to my PFD. I'm pulling them out. I'm thinking at this point, literally, like this is probably when the story is written of the guide who didn't know what he was doing, who died trying to pull someone out of this lagoon. And luckily we got through it. We didn't get back until like 4 the next morning into our camp again, and trying to make breakfast, trying to save face with all the different things. That's my fault that I put people in that condition in those spots. I had to tug them all the way back. I mean, once we got them in their boats, I mean, I really just had to pull them back. But it was really naive thinking that I could just, with the right energy, the right attitude, and a little bit of teaching, I would get them to be able to operate at a level that they weren't ready for.
Yeah. Oh, well, there's so many directions we can go from that. That's a great opening story. I love it. I mean, I've never been a guide like that, but just putting myself in your shoes, it's like how maybe overwhelming that felt. Like, what did I do? And here you are in day one of, what did you say, 6 of this journey, and you have all these other people that you're responsible for. The heaviness of that, I'm sure, was um, borderline overwhelming, if not overwhelming. I'm sure. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's an opportunity to reflect my whole life because we I would love to tell you that was the last time I was in a situation like that, right? Until I took over, an opportunity with one of my first schools, same kind of stuff, right? Like, oh, we got this, we'll figure it out, right? And then you find yourself, no matter how much um, excitement and energy and belief you have, there are still some very critical steps you need to make in order to be successful.
Yeah. Well, I think this is maybe unintentionally or intentionally kind of teeing up kind of the next chapter of your life. So you went from wilderness guy to how many years you did that, but then eventually you stumbled your way into school system and leadership. And how'd you get there?
Well, it always comes back to your mom. Not yours, mine, right? Like, hey, when are you coming home, Nick? Right? When are you going to grow up? In
Uh-huh,
the back of
uh-huh.
your mind, like, yeah, when am I going to move out of my car? Right? Kind of thing. So eventually, yeah, it was, I wanted to move back, use my undergrad because I was able to graduate in between kind of guiding and I wanted to go back into the classroom. And so I had an opportunity to work back in Wisconsin as a teacher. I worked with students who were qualified as at risk trouble. So I was kind of a coordinator for a district. Started working in that. Got into education for a little while, but the lesson that I learned early on was some of the practices, the principles, definitely the ingredients to how you lead in the outdoors is not how people lead in the front country, even though that's how we led in the back country. And for example, one quote that you hear me talk about all the time is we need to summit the mountain with our entire team. Not 50% of our team, not 75, not whatever fidelity number we want to come up with. We in the backcountry have to summit with our entire team. No guide would summit with half their team gone. And so, how do we, in our schools, and how do we in leadership positions in our classroom, in our hallways, how do we set up environments and conditions where everybody, and that is an expectation. It's not a hope. It is a we will set up every system in the 100%, not just belief but expectation that everyone will do it. And that really was a big deal for me as I started to work in schools and try to operate that way when that was not always the norm for how we were operating in the front country.
You talk about creating the conditions and the environment so your entire team summits the mountain. I love that. But let's drill down into that. What are let's say, three maybe keys that leaders need to get right if they truly want everyone to make it to the top?
Yeah, so this I'm really excited to talk to you about because I think there are like three kind of pieces that in every guiding situation, if I didn't have one of them, it would not work. And I believe now as I partner and I get to work with lots of people in the front country, business sector, education sector, I still think it's true. So the first one is bond, right? We need to make sure we spend the right amount of time creating an environment where people feel like they belong, people feel like they're significant, people feel like they're valued, and they have something to give. So the word we would use is, I cannot do this without you, right? Or we would talk in that sense. So there's this level of bond, and it's not just between leader and follower, if that's the words that we would want to use. It's really through the whole team. So setting up conditions where everyone truly starts to believe that. In the backcountry, we spend a lot of time before we head out into the wilderness making sure we have that, making sure we understand what everybody's interests are, but really where everybody's skills are.
Unless it's a
That's
couple
first.
random people from Florida, then, just
Yeah,
throw them
right.
in.
That I just breezed by. Exactly. No, like we can now go back now and tell
Yeah,
my first mistake, right? I spent no time with the bond. Like
right,
there was,
right,
I just assumed, I just jumped to this idea of like, we'll figure it out as we go. Well, think about how often we do that, Mike,
right. Yeah,
right?
right.
And we're just wondering like, oh, it's not that big of a deal. Or a great phrase that I love to hear in schools is like, well, adults should just know.
No,
No, we don't. We
nope,
don't just
nope.
know. And that right, we need to spend some actual time on what the conditions should look like for us all to be successful.
Yeah,
What do we value and what are we going to hold each other accountable? Let's actually talk about the behaviors we're going to see in this meeting in order for us to operate that way. So
love it.
yeah, bond is everything. So the second one is mastery. So that one is probably the most sense to everyone. You need to have the skill, right? You need to have the the ability to paddle, right? The ability to keep your boat straight, the ability to keep your boat upright, or if we're hiking, the ability to like bear bag when we get into camp, the ability to set up a stove, the ability to set up our tents, how we hike without fatigue. I mean, there are definite mastery things in every setting that we have to provide people, and we need interventions in education to help people get that mastery. We need to provide ongoing feedback for our teachers and our support staff to support them in growing in a job embedded professional development environment. We need to be very specific. How we do that is constant feedback, candor, right, and a lot of kindness, and a lot of care as we're working with people on being specific about how we can sharpen their sword, how we can really support them with the mastery piece. Looks very different in all the contexts, but I know that you cannot summit the mountain if people don't have skill, if they do not have the mastery. They need the bond first so they feel comfortable, the psychological safety to do the thing, and then they can build the skill, which is the mastery. That's the second piece. Third piece is belief. Individuals need to believe that they can actually do the thing. And this one is the number one thing that's forgotten, whether I'm working with a basketball coach or a superintendent of a school district. Do you believe that your team can do this? Well, what if I don't? Well, what are we going to do so that you can believe? Because whatever you believe, they already know. And that's the Pygmalion effect, right? It is like people will operate based on the belief system that we have. John Hattie knocked this out. Lots of great researchers have knocked this out. Belief is everything. Have you ever taught someone how to ride a bike, Mike?
Yes, of course.
You have. Okay, great. The bond is there. My guess is it was someone that was in your family, someone that you love, someone that you care about. Is that true?
Absolutely.
Okay,
Yeah.
bond. You had that one in lockdown. Mastery is the thing you're trying to tell them, right? You're constantly, hey, pedal a little faster. You know, if the speed is at a certain amount, we don't tip so much. But the last thing that always happens, they start to ride. And what do? They turn around to look at the person and they're like, am I doing it? Boom, crash, right? That's the last step to get someone up the mountain is an actual belief from the people around you that I can do this and I will do this. And then they start to believe now we can summit the mountain. And unfortunately, that one does get lost. We think mastery is probably enough. We often forget the bond, right? I did not believe that group was going to make it to Pedersen Lagoon once we started to paddle. So that was also missing in my story. And I think those three, when we break it down, I just don't know if this team is getting it, or we just can't quite get our numbers to that level, or it's all human, and it comes down to those three elements. Obviously, there's much more complexity to each of those than we're ready to cover today, but it breaks down to bond, mastery, and belief.
I love it. I love the simplicity of it, and also there's so much buried underneath one of those, each one of those. But I love, especially in a short, relatively short podcast like this, like that somebody listening can say, okay, it's just for some it's just a really good reminder. For some, it's like a new formula that maybe they needed that simplicity. But the bond, mastery, and belief, 100% agree. Those are all really important. And I ask you, like in your experience, I know you work with a lot of leaders, not just in education, and help do a lot of coaching and support for leaders. Where do you see the most often? Where do you see the miss or the gap of those three that people really need the support on? Or is there one?
It's a great question. I mean, this is going to be much more simplistic than probably you want. The biggest miss is we forget that we are leading humans. Like, really, humans are balls of emotion. And we all operate based on our past experiences and the events in our life, period, full stop. But we are also mammals. So we have chemicals that get released in our brain based on very certain things uh, that are in our DNA that are part of our developmental as a mammal. And if we don't recognize that bond produces certain chemicals because we are a herd animal. We recognize that if someone is not watching the cave, the saber tooth is going to get us. We were built in a way to release the right chemicals to keep us as bonded, right? We also have cortisol, which is the negative chemical because we're fearful, and things of fight and flight is a very key response. And so where we go wrong is we think a spreadsheet, or we think a different sort of email, or we think there must be a very complicated strategic plan that we could pull out. And really, what it comes down to, it's not the lighthouse we don't know where we're headed, it's the boat is broken. And the boat is made of humans. And every human needs to, right, feel that emotion of where are we headed. And when we press pause as leaders and truly just check in with our team, figure out where they are on that human level, that's why they would follow you. People strategic, like we're put in principal positions, we're put in as a CEO or as a floor manager. Those are titles, and that's some power that's given to you, but your team decides if they want to follow. And the way that the reason they would follow is if you have some level of credibility, and you build credibility by showing up for them as a human. That's where we go wrong. We make an assumption that because of title or because we have a great plan, everyone will follow it. Of course, they're going to see this amazing plan. But they won't if they don't feel valued, if they don't feel like they matter to that plan, if they don't feel like they're included in that plan, there's some level of partnership or ownership. We've just sort of missed it.
Yeah.
And I kid you not, I would say 90% of the dilemmas that are brought to my table when we really peel back the onion, it's we're missing that idea of we're not fulfilling some of those human needs in order for someone to truly want to follow.
Oh man, there's so much in there that way so true. And I just recent conversations that I've had with either leaders or teachers that are struggling, all of this is resonating. And here's something that's been on my mind I want to talk to you about. Like, we have all kinds of different people that are in leadership positions. Not necessarily leaders, but they're in leadership positions. And some have really strong relational, you know, skills or just natural tendencies to connect, build relationships, help people feel valued, and connect. Others that are put in leadership positions are doers and love a good spreadsheet and can whip together a strategic plan and get stuff done, but maybe lack the human element or lack a desire or a comfort in the relational side of things. Should that person just get out of leadership? Or I mean, do they have a chance? How do you fix that, Nick? Because some people are just like they want to be in a room working on a spreadsheet, but yet they're in a leadership position in a complex organization like a school that is just surrounded by relationships and people and humans. What should they just leave, or do they have a shot?
Remember at the beginning of this where I said I'm super excited to be here? That's so awesome. I would spend hours talking to you about this because this is like real. Like let's peel it back. Let's talk. Let's I 100% believe in bond, mastery, and belief. And I think everybody can be taught how to be a leader. I do think you're having some conversation there about management versus leadership. Great leaders need to manage and great managers need to lead. But those are very different activities in order to manage a situation or lead a situation. Many times we're put into positions where they're looking for a manager and other times they're looking for leaders, and sometimes both. And I think it's okay to recognize when do I need to show up as a manager and when do I need to show up as a leader. There are times people want an answer, people need to know what to do, and they need to be managed. Then they will, but there's many other times that they need to be led. And the best way to know is to ask them. and to really like to truly dig into that. We're all motivated by different things. I know a lot of people that listen to this podcast are in the educational realm, right? And we're shoulder tapped to move up, probably in their own schools or their own districts. Most of the time, who gets shoulder tapped? High performers.
Yep.
The best teachers are being shoulder tapped to become a mentor or to become the curriculum lead in your building or the lead of the fourth grade team or run the PLC, or maybe you're a dean, you get shoulder tapped to be the assistant principal, right? Because you're high performing at a different thing than what it takes to be a leader. And that's a leap that we need to make, and just be honest about that. We are also changing the stakeholder group that's the most important. Students are the most important. I'm probably going to get kicked off your podcast when I'm ready to say this, right? I am not here to tell you that students are not the most important in a school. I'm not going to go live and say that. I probably just did. But when you're a teacher, your number one stakeholder group is students. When you become the leader of a building, your number one stakeholder group are the teachers. If you
I might
show
get
up for
kicked off the
them,
podcast too because I agree with that.
but oftentimes we got shoulder tapped to be the leader because we're so darn good with students.
Yeah.
And a principal said this to me about 6 months ago when I was interviewed. They're like, you know what? This leading a school thing would be a lot easier if there wasn't a bunch of adults here, right? Totally,
And that is true.
totally.
That is true.
Because all of a sudden the closet door is opened and you see all these skeletons in there, right? And you see, oh my goodness, I didn't realize this when I was in my third grade room just crushing it. And now I see a lot of these other, it's a different skill set. And so for someone to say, I've never met a leader that doesn't need support. Like they all do. I did. I still do on a regular basis. So of course, we might have some struggle with, I'm really good at this management activity, I'm really good at this, I'm a great strategic visionary kind of person, but I do need some help with how do I build some EI, how do I build some emotional intelligence, how do I understand what my emotions are and what other people's emotions are when I walk into a room, what does that look like, how do I create action around some of my intention, because people don't follow intention, right? They follow how we behave. So how do I create those right routines where I show up in a consistent way every day so that people start to believe I am showing up for them? Those are skills that we absolutely can discuss. Those are skills we can practice. Those are behaviors that we can start to do and then build them into routine and start to show up more as a leader. And I don't know any leader that has it all figured out. So the last piece I would say to someone is hang in there, ask for help, have the willingness to be vulnerable about what you need to work on and the courage to go do it. Right? I think is a really big conversation because we all need to get better at something. And if someone's willing to do that, and usually your team will tell you if you're willing to ask.
Well, I wrote down something as you were talking. I mean, there's so much again in there, but you might be really strong on the relational side or really strong on the management side or but y chances are you're not strong like everywhere. You have some holes. You have some areas. I mean, that's just going to be the fact. But where it starts, I think, is having the humility and self-awareness to to say that, to be okay with saying, I have some things I need to work on, and being aware enough to say, okay, I'm really strong here, but man, I really need to grow here. And as a school leader, or just maybe as a leader in general, and I haven't led in a lot of other areas outside of education, but you're dealing with so many complex humans all at once that have so many different needs, parents, staff. I mean, even within your staff, you have, a lot of variety within staff and then students and all and it makes it exponentially harder because you're dealing with so much variety of people while also trying to move this huge ship forward and make some significant gains. So it's a really, really hard job. And so if someone's doing this job, and personally believe if they don't have somebody that they're leaning on for kind of some regular coaching and mentoring, they're doing themselves and honestly, I think their school a disservice because there's some holes there. There's some gaps. I know I had them and still do that that I needed help on, and I still need help on. And but I think it really starts with that humility and self-awareness and willingness to say, okay, I want to get better and grow as a leader, and I need some help on doing that. And I don't think it happens typically in a 8-hour workshop over a weekend. I think it happens in small conversations like this where you can really zoom in on where I'm strong and where I'm struggling.
Leaders are learners, right? Like leaders are always learning, and they're willing to have that humility that there's always something more. They're curious, right? They're asking those kinds of questions, and for a variety, one, we do need to get better, right? We're trying to figure things out. I would always tell people if my team only went as far as I could take them, it's not far enough. There are other people that are going to help me.
Hmm.
But when we're in leadership situations, when I was the leader of a school and a whole building and a staff and parents and stakeholders and a board, and to think about how stressed that is, who do you turn to, Mike? Like, who can you have an open and honest dialogue with that has no stake in the game, right? Is that someone I should talk to my leadership team with? My board president? My favorite parent? Do I bring that home to my partner?
Right.
No. But we got that crazy in our heads sometimes where we're like, I don't know if I'm good enough. Right? I don't know if that's the right move, or I can't sleep at night because I'm worried about passing that budget. All the things. It's okay to just check in and find that right person that doesn't have any stake except you,
Yep.
right? They're willing to ask the tough questions, be a soft accountability partner, right? But also be that avenue to just listen and to help you reframe. Most leaders that I work with, they have all the answers, but they do get a little bit jumbled because we're human and all the emotions jumble our logic. And so some people need to help us unpack some of those emotions to get our logic back in order so we can use the right part of our brain to kind of move our group forward. And I think you're right on for some reason though, we haven't given leaders the permission to say, I need some help and I might want a coach, or I need an accountability partner, or I need to meet with someone on a regular basis to process this. A lot of individuals feel like because I was hired to be the superintendent of this district, I should have it all figured out. And my advice to lots of boards that I talk to is when you hire your next superintendent, make sure there's a package in there for a coach. It's just
Yes.
part of the expectation.
Yep.
We just believe that you're an amazing person, and a gift we are going to give you is we're going to have you find a coach
Yes.
to support you with that journey. That will pay off, I guarantee you, more than whatever that number is to help them get them over the edge. And I think there are a group of leaders out there that understand that level of importance and might even take that package if they knew, because now I know the board gets it too.
Yeah.
My board gets it.
Yep. Absolutely. Yeah, and I wonder, is it pride? Is it maybe lack of resources? Is it, what? It's probably a variety of things that why more leaders don't have or reach out and connect with a leadership coach or a mentor to help support them. I think it's crucial for their longevity in the work. And I also see it as like a form of ongoing maintenance, not just a bailout when things get overwhelming that you go to somebody and get that support, but it should be kind of part of. I put it in the same realm of getting as much sleep as you can, nutrition, drinking water, exercise, having access to a mentor or a coach like if you can build some of that into your regular maintenance as a leader, you're going to be exponentially more better. I mean, impactful as a leader. But sometimes it's like those are the things we drop off. All those things I just mentioned are like, well, I'm going to just eat this burrito because I'm standing up because I don't have a time for a really good lunch, or I'm staying up late worried about this or whatever else. I'm not getting to sleep and I don't have time for a mentor or a coach. And it's like all those things are going to sustain you in this work, in this really hard work, but they're the first things to get kind of dropped off the list. Is there also I don't know, this feeling of like maybe um, I don't know, right, the right word, where I feel like if I'm working with a leadership coach or a mentor that maybe I'm not, you know, not strong enough as a leader, that I can't do this on my own. Do you think there's that mentality out there?
100%. Like, yeah, that's that permission piece, I think, is that what if someone knows that I have that? A lot of times, back to your earlier point, I think our past experiences and events in our life tell us that when you have that, you're in the penalty box. Something must have happened. So now we're giving you that. We wait till, oh, whether it's a breakdown mentally or a job performance issue, now you need to work with said person to get through that,
Ah,
right? It's a
yes. Yeah.
performance. And it is much more punitive in performance rather than, to your point, it's maintenance, right? We're not waiting for the car to break down. We're going to give that an oil change so our car consistently works. And so I think there is some misconception out there that if you're working with it, there must be something wrong, and not necessarily like that's your ticket to full human potential, right? That's your opportunity to maximize your ability to lead people. They're going to squeeze every idea you have, and they're going to give it rocket fuel to support you. That's the way I look at some of that. I'm not here to say everybody should have a coach, not necessarily, but I don't know a leader out there that doesn't need some level of support. And so, what does that look like? And if nothing else out of this podcast, I hope everybody has that reflection of how am I continuing to grow? Who is supporting me? I know that um, if we're not doing it, it's really hard to ask someone else to do it.
Yes.
And for me, I have a mentor. I have my own personal coach that if I'm not meeting with them, like I know that I'm not maximizing. And I was probably not a very good coach until I started to recognize I needed to have one as well. And I think that's just a really big piece because we do a lot of that. Leaders grow leaders. That's our job. Our job is not to build a kingdom, right? It's to build a legacy, and it's to grow more leaders. But in order to do that, we also have to recognize we need to continuously grow. So who are we leaning on? Who are we reaching out to? What podcast are we listening to in order to continue to grow and challenge ourselves? We've got to get busy getting better.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. I want to shift gears a little bit, and just because I read your story and I love it, and I want you to share maybe the Michael story, and within that, um, you know, well, I'll let you still tell the story, and then I'll ask the question. How about that? Let's start with the story.
Great. So I had an opportunity to be a leader in a school that was struggling, and we were able to do a lot of great things to really re-envision like who we are, and to really like dig into some of the student behavior, and I think this story of Michael just really summarizes a lot of that work. Michael was the kind of kid that if your weed whacker was broken, you could like bring it in, and by the end of the day, he would fix it. Right. I mean, he would just, I don't know what he did. He just disappeared. He came back and it was working. And there were like three screws he didn't use that were still left out. Right. I mean, he was that kind of student. Unfortunately, Michael got into a lot of trouble. It followed him, and he had some anger, and emotions often got the best of him. And on this particular day, um, I was called down to Michael, where Michael was in his classroom. It was reported that he had some narcotics on him, and he needed to get out of the room. He was loud. He was obnoxious. So go down to get Michael, bringing him back, and as we're entering back into the like the office area, I could just hear through the wall Michael's mom already just screaming at our office assistant, and you could just see Michael just sort of drop, where it was like it was another one of those days. Got Michael back into my office, and I said, "Hey, Michael, you're gonna have to empty your pockets. What do you have?" And he starts emptying his pockets. I think there was like a chapstick in there. There was a couple of things yep, that shouldn't have been in there. He's gonna need to go home. A note was in there. A washer was in there. He sort of empties it all out, and eventually, we needed to get him to get him home. And, most students wouldn't necessarily empty their pockets for you. You'd have to go through a whole process, but we had that relationship, and that was Michael. He was always very straight to it. Unfortunately, his PO had to come pick him up, and that was an ordeal that he had left. And those days where you're rooting for kids as leaders, right? And as teachers. I mean, we carry that weight and we just get so defeated. And so when I returned to my office, I remember I was half mad where I wanted to kick a chair, and I half wanted to sit on the chair and start to cry. Right. Because you're just like, what are we gonna do? And I'm cleaning off my table where he had emptied out his pocket, and there was that note that he had taken out of his jeans. And earlier in that year, like, we had decided as a staff that we needed to make a bigger impact on those students that had repeat behavior problems. So one of the thoughts that we had was we were going to write a message to every single kid that had repeat behaviors, and we were going to tell them how important they were. We were going to tell them how much they were needed at our school. We were going to build that bond that we talked about earlier. We were going to tell them how significant they were. That note that he had taken out of his pocket, when I undid it, it was the note from his teacher from months before. And he's still carrying that around in his pocket that day. That's the power that we have as educators. That's how much we matter to our students. They don't always tell us. In fact, sometimes the way they tell us kind of hurts our feelings, right? But they absolutely like follow what we have to say and the impact that we make. And I love that story because sometimes we have to take a step back as we're doing school improvement, as we're trying to hit those benchmarks, we're trying to get that next data point, we're trying to prep for that test. And we just have to remember how much we matter to the humans that are in front of us every day and the power that we have. Educators are superheroes, Mike, 100% superheroes. And his teacher was a superhero because she absolutely impacted his life as he looked at that note. I mean, every day. Yeah, he probably wore the same jeans a lot. I'm not going to lie to you, but that note had transferred, and that's a pretty powerful situation.
I love it. Yeah, such a good story. And honestly, one to kind of help wrap this up. You started with a great story with the backcountry dilemma, and then finishing that story. But I think that's a really good one to kind of think about. And but that wouldn't have happened. That note in his pocket wouldn't have happened without your leadership. The teacher wrote that letter because you called some action and say, hey, we're going to do this. And maybe she would have, maybe, or he or she would have written that note, but the probability of that was higher because you said as a leader, this is something we're going to do, and you made it a priority, and made a huge impact obviously on that student where he's carrying that note around. I remember the year after COVID for our school, when we spent a whole year trying to distance kids and masks and all this stuff and kind of undoing some of the damage with that, we did a whole initiative on noticing, naming, and knowing students. And it was just noticed, named, and known, making sure that every student felt when they walked in, they were noticed, they were named, and then it's kind of the next level is really knowing them. And I think that's so important that we don't lose track of that, and our teachers have so much impact in doing that. But sometimes, but really as leaders, we need to kind of put that front and center because it's not just going to happen out of thin air. We kind of have to push those things forward to make them a reality in our schools. So the example that you gave with the notes, that initiative that we had, it's like you got to push those things and make those important. And when you have the bond, the mastery, and the belief, things happen.
100%. I love that notice, named, and known. And, with the notes and things like that, those are all 100% in our control. How people choose to act, how people show up in a meeting, right? A lot of that stuff we're losing sleep over, that's out of our control. But tomorrow, you could give a note to somebody. That's 100% in your control and how they would want to respond to it. Just knowing that that's helping someone be noticed, it's helping name them, right? And it's helping to get to know them and know that they're valued and they're cared about. 100% in your control. I would recommend to every leader that's listening to this, every night before you go, send one email to someone. Make it one sentence. Be real specific about why you appreciate them, what you noticed, how you know them, and just that one email. I promise you, it will release oxytocin in your brain. It'll make you feel a little better on your drive home. And when they read it, they'll do it. And you know what they're going to want to do? Because this is how we're built. They're going to want to do the same thing to someone else. And that 100% in your control. I love that. Noticed, named, and known. Thanks.
Was going to ask as the closing question, like, what's one way you could be a transformative principal? And I think you just answered it, but giving one great takeaway on how to become a transformative principal, unless you have another one to top that one, that's a really good one. So, um,
Yeah, do it. Do it every day, every Friday for sure.
yeah,
Send it. I'm not going to get too much into brain science and neuroscience for you, but there are two different chemicals. You want the release of the positive email on your way out when you close your laptop, not the other one. The cortisol will drive you all weekend, and that's not what we want.
yeah,
So
absolutely. Well,
cool.
awesome. Nick, so thanks so much for being on this. We'll drop your LinkedIn and whatever else you want in the show notes so people know how to reach out to you. Perhaps even leave your profile link on Link Leaders so if they want to connect with you as a coach or a mentor that you're available to them. You have so much to offer to leaders, not just in education but outside of education as well. And I've really appreciated both getting to know you and also picking your brain from time to time and you mentoring me from time to time. So I appreciate that. So Nick, thanks again for being part of this. And for those that are listening, we'll see you next time.
Thanks so much, Mike.